Okay, so today is our both the Saturday night and the lunar observance. So the lunar observance, Uposatha day, and for those who are in the monastery, or for those who are outside the monastery wanting to commit to what's called the Uposatha Sila, the precepts for the lay person on the observance days, taking the refuges and the 8 precepts. And it's a opportunity to just picking up the training within those precepts for a night and a day, as a for especially for the lay people in the world. Of course, for the people in the monastery, it's sort of the kind of baseline people commit to. But it's I'd say the origin of the Uposatha Sila, the precepts, as the Buddha himself reflecting, because it was standard in India to have the lunar observance as lunar days, and people would go to the temple shrines, gathering places for religious wanderers. And of course, in the time of the Buddha, there are many different religious sects, so that they had different teachings, and they would gather to listen to the teachings, and the same for the followers of the Sakyamuni Buddha. And so they would pick up the teachings and practice along with the community. But the Buddha was reflecting and wanting to give it a bit more structure, a bit more systematization, and thinking was that what he could set up as a part of the training for the lay community. And that, so I'm thinking, well, the arahants, those beings who are completely freed from greed, hatred, and delusion, they live their whole life without taking the life of any living creature. What if the lay people did that for a day and a night and lived like the arahants and refrain from taking the life of any living creature? And the same with then they'll say the arahants, those beings freed from all greed, hatred, and delusion, completely liberated, spend their whole life without taking that which is not given to them. If the lay people lived like those purified beings, and for a day and a night, and didn't take what wasn't given, then one didn't. And the same with all of those 8 precepts. That was the Buddha. That was it's okay. That's a beautiful way to live, beautiful way to train, beautiful way to take the teachings and the practice and the training into daily life, and on a lunar observance day to sort of maybe up the ante a bit and give a bit more structure for oneself. So that recollecting the refuges, Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, recollecting the 8 precepts, so that sort of going, and those 8 precepts are say renunciant precepts. The 5 precepts are more like moral precepts. Sort of those are the foundation of fundamental integrity. 8 precepts are starting to how to renunciant precepts picking up training in simplicity and focus, so that those are helpful tools to pick up on a regular basis through your an ordinary week, and so it's like a good foundation to return to on I say once a week. Sort of, okay, let's do a reset here, or let's clarify that. Let's make that commitment, and it's like returning to foundations, returning to fundamental principles, returning to the kind of the nuts and bolts of the practice and the training. And I think, say for myself these days, similar. I'm just there's a lot sort of going on. There's a lot in the world. And one can't help but be affected by it. How does one respond, or how does one view that? And for myself, just coming back to the foundations, coming back to fundamental principles, establishing and revisiting the basis, like resetting a baseline in practice. And one of the things that I'm just picking up and reviewing and reflecting on and considering there's 4 foundations of mindfulness. I mean, that's really is a fundamental foundation, fundamental baseline for the spiritual life, for our say within the Buddha's teachings. And of course, the Buddha is quite explicit in his when he gave those teaching on those satipatthana, those 4 foundations of mindfulness, or the 4 frames of reference, that this was a direct way, or it was leading to a purification of the heart, a freedom from suffering, and of course that is really what is most important to all of us. Unless you're really committed to increasing your suffering and making your heart more confused and agitated. But I doubt that is anybody's. I mean, you have to be really committed, especially living in a Buddhist monastery, to just keep how do I make myself suffer more? And people do it. But that's not the point. And to review and return to those fundamental principles of the teachings and of the practice, and those four foundations of mindfulness are just so important. Or just reflecting on that place of mindfulness in the teachings, and of course mindfulness doesn't stand alone. I think that's a really, of course, there isn't any of the teachings that really stand alone. If there's this one thing that you and that's the only one thing you have to do. I mean that isn't how the Buddha's teaching is laid out. It isn't how the Buddha taught. He really points to the how things are conditioned, and how they're that web of conditions that help to support that freedom from suffering, which we all wish for, aspire to, yearn for. There's a discourse where the Buddha talks of he begins with teach you right concentration, right samadhi, because we're all interested in meditation and how do I get my meditation together? How do I get this right concentration? And then the Buddha, it's Majjhima 117, the Great 40, and then the Buddha says, well, just like this right concentration is actually, any concentration that is supported by all of the other 7 factors in the Eightfold Path. That's what right concentration is. So the Buddha already pointing to these, the interaction and interplay, interdependence of these different factors of training, practice, cultivation, and then he starts to elucidate it further, and then pointing to each of the factors of the Eightfold Path, and then each factor of the Eightfold Path is supported by right view, right effort, right mindfulness. So all of the factors are all working together and in order to support each other, to assist each other, to help to clarify each other, So that as we cultivate, and again, this isn't as if even with like the Eightfold Path of say, right view, right resolve, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration. It isn't as if it's a linear thing. Okay, if I just sort of knock out that right view first, and then I can get on to right resolve, and do it in a nice, neat and tidy, linear way, and get it all in the right boxes. It doesn't work like that. It's because it's just they work together. They support each other, and it it's we'll end up having endless frustration and probably a lot of misunderstanding if we try to separate things too much. But learn how to, it's really important to learn how to use the teachings and use these different elements of practice and training and reflection in a way that is trying to tease it out and understand it more clearly, how we can support those aspects. So right view, right effort, right mindfulness are, of course, those are each of the path factors review around that. So it's and when the Buddha talks of right view, I mean, there's the right view in terms of what's skillful, what's unskillful. There is that which is given, and there is generosity. There is the fruits of skillful action and the fruits of unskillful action. It's just that is ordinary. So on a mundane level, it's that aspect of the actions bear fruit, and they bear fruit in different ways. And then right view on a more transcendent level, a liberative level, is right view, or just looking things more from a phenomenological, experiential mode. And that brings it back. There is dukkha, there is suffering, there is unsatisfactoriness. There is a cause, there's a cessation, there's a path leading to cessation, looking at things from the experience mode rather than from a sense of self and personalizing everything, making it about me and either my successes or me and my failures, or me and my benefit. What am I going to get out of it? Me and my loss, and what am I losing? I mean, that all of that personalizing, that in itself is that is dukkha. So that's just looking, recognizing that there's an experiential mode where we tune into that experience of dukkha and freedom from dukkha, freedom and that sense of or stress and freedom from stress. They're looking at how it feels, what the tone of the experience is. And then from the perspective of the self-effort, what is the kind of effort that we put in? And similarly, that is looking at the effort that is for either the it's looking at in kusala and akusala in the sense of skillful, unskillful, wholesome, unwholesome, leading to well-being, leading to stress. So that what is it that supports what effort is there for the supporting of the wholesome, the beneficial, and for the relinquishing or preventing of the unwholesome, the unbeneficial, the stressful. What effort is there? And it isn't necessarily how much we do, but it's that tone or the clarity of the effort. And of course, mindfulness is what is able to attend to experience and be able to that sense of mindfulness, awareness, knowing. And it's not a passive awareness or a quote-unquote bare awareness, because mindfulness from the Buddhist perspective in terms of right mindfulness, it does have a certain ethical element, and so that's like Ajahn Chah saying, it's the mindfulness has a discerning quality as to what's right, what's wrong, what's useful, what's not useful. And again, he said like you can't really be a successful thief if you're not mindful. But that's not the kind of mindfulness that is going to lead to freedom from suffering. And that creates more complication and difficulty in one's own life and the life of others. So that sense of mindfulness is there's definite nuances, and again, seeing how these interact, and that's the function of mindfulness is to be aware, to assess, to reflect. It's like having and it was just coming back to that sense of suffering. What is it that is useful for the alleviation of suffering, of discontent, of dissatisfaction, of dis-ease? And it's like having like a knot or a tangle. And you can't just sort of go in there willy-nilly and pull on this and just, or use brute strength, because you can be making that knot get tighter and more intransigent, more impossible to undo. So it takes mindfulness, it takes discernment, it takes that kind of effort, it takes a kind of view, stepping back and looking at, how's this work? And just taking the time to review and reflect on it clearly. That's why mindfulness is, say, in itself is say, like when the Buddha talks of mindfulness, it's never on its own, in the sense that it's always the factors of, say, it's like in the Pali, Atapi sampajano satima vinaya lokeya pichato manasa. So atapi is the factor of effort. I mean, it's as, imagine Jeff translates it as ardent, and atapi is it's like tapas is like effort and striving, sort of this, and so it's there is this sense of application of effort, but then say right effort, balanced effort, because it is also important to reflect when like these terms are. When we talk of the Eightfold Path, right view, right effort, right mindfulness, that sense of right is not in terms of like right versus wrong, but right in terms of just right. Right in terms of being right in tune. Because that's that word in Pali, samma ditti, samma vayama, samma sati. That gets translated as right mindfulness, right effort. That word samma is actually, its root is from a musical term. So then you say, oh, okay, that makes sense. Where it means to be right in terms of right in tune, or just right, where, and we know this from, say, chanting. I mean, you can have a whole lot of voices that are, you don't have to make them all the same in order for it to be, to harmonize or to be pleasing and be, but it does. It's just it's sort of in tune just enough to work together, and just, or at least not to make it too miserable. And that's the. But that sense of having that sense of balance, in attuning, so that right mind, that function of these path factors is not trying to have some absolute quality of view, absolute quality of mindfulness, but it's that mindfulness that is tuning into the experience. And again, that sense, the whole purpose is, and the Buddha says it over and over again, that I teach only two things: dukkha and the cessation of dukkha, suffering and the ending of suffering. This is what it's for. That's what its purpose is. So that then those qualities of mindfulness, having a clarity of mind that's able to tune in, so that it requires a certain ardency. You can't just kick back and be clear. It's not the way the mind works. It'd be nice if it was, but it isn't how it works. It needs some attunement. It needs some balance. It needs a certain effort applied. And again, it's not a striving effort, but it's an effort that is attuned to what's skillful, what's not skillful. And the same thing with, say, Sampajano. This usually translated clear comprehension, Ajahn Chef translates it as alert. There's an alertness, there's a presence there. That's kind of, there's a certain assessment that's going on. It's a function of in the Visuddhimagga, clear comprehension is and sampajanya is equated to wisdom and to discernment. There's a certain discernment that's functioning, and that so that sense of the developing of a clear comprehension is an alertness. There's traditionally, say in the commentarial literature, when they kind of define clear comprehension, and it has different say functions. In that it's say like clear comprehension of purpose. When there's clear comprehension functioning, it's recognizing, well, what's the purpose? What am I trying to do? So what's this effort for? What's it trying to accomplish? Or in some particular activity that one's picking up, or some within the meditation itself. What am I trying to do? Sometimes we can be so focused on striving or trying to control the mind. There's that you say, well, what am I actually trying to do? This is counterproductive. So that understanding, clear, well, what's the purpose? And then a clear comprehension of suitability. Is it suitable? Is it not suitable? Is it actually say whatever action of body, speech, or mind? Is it suitable? Is it appropriate for the task? Is it appropriate for the purpose that I would want to achieve or to experience? So that sense of clear comprehension is reflecting. There's an investigation going on. So in the Buddha's teachings, there's quite of course there's wisdom, which is I think well translated as discernment, discerning clearly. But there's all sorts of other words that the Buddha uses to imply that sense of reflection, investigation. Yoniso manasikara, wise attention, wise consideration. That one needs to have that. It's considering clearly. The vichara, an application of mind that is clarifying things. Dhamma vichaya, which is an enlightenment factor, reflection on dhammas. So there's many different, and then there's others that are there. They are synonymous with reflection, investigation, contemplation. Those are all applying the mind in a reflective way. Not just trying to either to force the mind or to If I just put forth enough effort and recite something, somehow my mind is magically going to change and become wise and radiant. I mean, it takes, that's a part of mindfulness, is that reflection. So clear comprehension of purpose, clear comprehension of suitability, clear comprehension of domain in the sense of am I, in terms of meditation, is this mindfulness that I'm trying to apply, am I, because sometimes the mind gets, say it tries to do something too refined. The Buddha says to be mindful of mind states, which is great. It's really appropriate. Definitely what the Buddha, but then the mind isn't ready for it. It's too, maybe it might be a bit too restless, or it starts okay and it gets a bit, it's a bit too refined an object, so then it gets kind of spacey and then it just drifts, which is it's not, the domain is not appropriate, or you're picking up the body as a contemplation, and it's which of course the Buddha says over and over again how important mindfulness of the body is. But then, say one's contemplating it in some particular way or mindful of it in a particular way, and then it's again, it's not. It might not be uplifting the mind, or it might not be, or it's getting a bit too tied up in something. So it's mindfulness of the domain, and certainly in terms of ordinary life. What am I doing? Who am I associating with? That's mindfulness of domain. That has an effect. So that sense of mindfulness. So what is what's its function? What's it doing? So that and the last quality, mindfulness, or clear comprehension of reality, is how it's translated sometimes. Asamoha is a clear comprehension of non-delusion. And usually that is meaning that clear comprehension of not bringing self-bias into what we're doing, not bringing in that personalizing, bringing in the whole complication of I, me, and mine into experience. So there's these factors of clear comprehension. Alert, when there's a clear comprehension of purpose, of suitability, of domain, of reality, the mind would certainly be alert and really present. And so these are one of the qualities, factors of mindfulness. Atapi sampajana, satima, say possessed of mindfulness, possessed of sati. And sati, from the say the root of the word is, we've inherited the word mindfulness, and it's it's a good enough word, but it's good to see that it's, say, the roots of the say, of the Pali word, are also, there's a factor of memory. So there's a certain quality of recollection, of both being present but then recollecting as well, bringing to mind, recollecting the mind on an object, being able to bring it back to an object, or to bring a memory, a perception of a circumstance back into the present. So it's again, it's an application of mind. It's not a passive. It's not as if we're like some like CCTV camera and sort of up there, and sort of, or like that camera up there is looking at, and it's making a record of the circumstance. It isn't quite how mindfulness works. There's this sense of awareness and presence, and then recollection, a certain ability to remember, bring to mind. And then the last factor of mindfulness, in terms of how the Buddha said right mindfulness, and as a path factor, as vinaya lokeya pichatomana. So sort of like stepping back from the grief and distress in the world. That sense of abhijatomanasa, sort of either longing for, in terms of desire, and domanasa in terms of sadness. So that sense that longing for, or the grief towards the world, and the world being not the world out. I mean, there is the world out there, but then the Buddha often defined the world as, what we experience through the senses, the world that we conceive of, or that we do perceive. That is the world, or that which we experience, both in the present and in our memory of sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, ideas, feelings, emotions. That is the world. So that and then we react to it. We experience it. We feel. But it's also, we have the mindfulness as that opportunity to step back from that, and just to be present, to acknowledge it, to recognize it, but not to entangle ourselves within that, because that perpetuates that process of suffering, that process of dukkha. So to be to reflecting on this aspect of mindfulness, but then of course right mindfulness is also supported by the different path factors. It's supported by say right view, by right effort. Those are really important factors to be reflecting on, because those are the qualities that allow us to have a base of clarity, to see things more clearly, to make skillful and wise decisions. What what do we invest our emotional energy in? What do we invest our attention in? What's going to bring about more well-being for ourselves and for the world around us? What's going to create more suffering for ourselves and the world around us? Because we're making those decisions all the time. And it requires that kind of fundamental mindfulness that is informed by right view, right effort. And it's that that ability to to keep coming back to those fundamentals, those foundations, those kind of, it seems sort of like, okay, it's sort of Buddhist practice 101, but it's what we have to keep returning to and not overlooking it. It's like there's a beautiful image that the Buddha uses with and one is with say an idiom that's used, like say the dust of the world, and it's like as a bird sort of shakes off the dust, and you can see that with the quails. I mean they kind of get into the sort of. I mean that's how they kind of they get in the dust and they go roll around and move around that, but then they shake themselves off, and then it's like a cleaning, a cleansing, and that is like just as a bird shaking itself off from the dust of the world, and we can be doing this. It's that mindfulness, it's that effort, it's that cultivation of this path of a practice, and the developing of more of clarity and awareness, or the commitment to training. It's like one of the images that the Buddha uses with the just the simple image of a fletcher straightening the arrows, and in the same way that a practitioner kind of straightens the mind, and just with that training, with that practice, with that cultivation, in the same way that a fletcher is able to straighten out a piece of wood and get it nice so that it flies true. In the same way that we're straightening out our mind so that it's rooted in these, grounded in these principles of truth, and the heart, the mind really flies true. It doesn't sort of wander off. It doesn't end up crooked and just sort of flopping down. So that and again, where these there's the practice of Dhamma is not. It's not just one thing. It's there's all these different factors, and you have to take the time and the care and the attention and the effort to how does that balance, how does it become in tune, how is it just right, and we have to attend to that. I mean, it's kind of like like cooking. I mean, it's when you're cooking something and making some kind of dish. I mean, you have to keep tasting it and see what's the flavor. What does it need to make it sort of just right? And so and you can't do that from say just an idea or just by an assumption of what something looks like. I remember years ago, I wasn't there, I only heard the stories. Um, um, One of the monks was offered something, I think, from his family for like a monetary offering for his birthday, and then they said they wanted to do something special, so they wanted to do chocolate eclairs, and this whole effort was put into doing chocolate eclairs. They did it at night time though, so they weren't tasting it, and there was a couple different batches that were done, and anyway, one of the batches, rather than sugar, it was salt that was put in, so nobody tasted it. But it was in the chocolate eclair, so then and didn't know it until it was offered and go to taste it, and it was not a wonderful chocolate eclair. So that that tasting experience, adjusting, that's a part of the process, and that needs to be taken an interest in, so that as we in our practice, in our training, our cultivation, our living a life of Dhamma, it's there is this constant balance that we have to attend to, but it's it's returning to the fundamentals, returning to the foundations, and to refining how we pick them up, how we apply them, how we learn from them. And as we do that, it really opens the doors to this opportunity for experience the fruits of the practice. And the Buddha says, that it has one flavor. This flavor of the Dhamma is this flavor, this taste of freedom. To offer that for reflection this evening.